Pittsburgh is built to perform. From America's #1 selling floor jacks to sockets, ratchets, and shop equipment, Pittsburgh delivers the reliability you need at prices that can't be beat. Only at Harbor Freight.
So I think backing up a bit, just to give people who don't know what's going on some information, what is Geo Group and what is CoreCivic, these two companies?
They've both been around for decades, and they've both basically operated private prisons for a long time. And this has been a controversial industry. It's been around for a long time, but it's based on the idea that the state and federal governments have struggled over the years to properly operate prisons. And over time, they've seen kind of an opportunity to outsource some of the prisons. And by prisons, I'm saying people who are criminally charged and convicted and sent to serve a sentence in prison. You know, these places are now operated by local and state and federal governments, but they're also operated by these private companies that have, you know, been criticized with stripping out some of the quality of care and quality of life inside these places. So this kind of backlash has led the Geo Group and CoreCivics of the world to start focusing more and more on ICE detention contracts. So they have seen a decline in their former business, their core business of prisons, and so they're trying to replace that by going into ICE detention. And they've been very successful in that. So over the past 10 years or so, ICE has become the biggest source of revenue for Geo Group and CoreCivic. So it's become a very kind of symbiotic relationship, and it's also kind of this relationship has been very, very profitable for these companies. And under this Trump administration, we're now seeing these companies really kind of like take advantage of their position when the government is saying, we need to deport millions of people. Well, these companies are now going and saying, we can reopen all these former prisons that were closed under Obama and Biden, and we can fill those prisons with immigrant detainees. So they're seeing kind of a huge expansion opportunity under this administration. And, you know, for the most part, their businesses have prospered because of that.
What percentage of detention facilities that are set up for immigrants are currently operated by either Geo Group or CoreCivic?
The vast majority of immigrant detainees are inside of facilities run by private companies. Now, just the sheer number of ICE detention facilities is very big because many of them are small, and many of them include small county jails that hold prisoners, but they also hold ICE detainees. So there are dozens and dozens of those. These private detention contractors operate much larger detention facilities that typically hold between 500 to 2,500 detainees, and so they're more kind of concentrated in these private detention centers.
But let's say, like, who owns Otay Mesa?
I think that's CoreCivic, but I'll have to check on that one. I think that's CoreCivic.
Yeah, I think that it is, because I'm one of the few people, not to make this about myself, but I'm one of the few American non-immigrants to be detained in ICE detention.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Tell me about that.
I crossed the border with some coyotes in the Mexican state of Coahuila over the river, so I walked the river to Eagle Pass. I thought that I could do it. Turns out you can't. Even if you're an American citizen, you can't hop your own border.
Wow.
So I got held in an ICE detention facility for 3 days, and it was terrifying. It was like 40 people in a room, one bathroom, one jug of Gatorade in the center of the room. Everybody gets space blankets, 62 degrees in there. It's like a refrigerator. They play Marley and Me over and over again for days. I don't know if it's a torture method or if they just don't have any other DVDs there. And so everybody, but then I was there for days, but most people stay, the immigrants that were in my pod, it would be 1 day, and they'd be transferred to Otay Mesa, which is a private facility.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you answered the question that way, because there are these small processing centers that are owned by counties and states. Mine was owned by the actual DHS or CBP.
Yeah.
South Texas Processing Center.
Did you not tell them you're an American citizen?
They don't give a fuck.
Really?
They were so mad at me. They were just angry, and like, I think I presented a real like moral conundrum for some of these ICE guys.
Yeah.
Because they were like, or the CBP guys.
Yeah.
Because they had been used to treating people like, kind of like slabs of meat, like detainees, like, where are you from? You're from Guatemala. All right, get in there. You're gonna be home soon. For me, they like didn't know whether to treat me like a detainee or a person.
Yeah.
But I got no phone calls, nothing like that. Nobody knew where I was.
Huh. Wow, that's quite an experience.
Yeah, but the point is, everybody was going from there to Otay Mesa, and I was wondering, you know, and then I looked it up, and it is owned by CoreCivic.
Yeah.
So you have these private companies owning a lot of these private prisons or private detention facilities, but you've also done some reporting that shows inroads between Geo Group and the Trump administration itself.
Yeah.
And this is interesting because so much of Trump's recent focus has been on acquiring different things like, for example, oil from Venezuela or rare earth elements from Greenland. And you see that there's many people in both of those natural resource lobbies that have funded his campaign and are currently embedded in some way in his administration.
Yeah.
Where are the inroads between Geo Group and the Trump admin?
Well, you know, I see this a lot, and I think it, and I've explored it, but there's this question of, you know, is the Trump administration detaining so many people for so long? Are they putting these people in these places to generate money for this industry? I haven't seen any smoking gun of that so far, but there are some pretty interesting connections that one would explore if you were exploring that question. Geo Group has a long history, in particular Geo Group, has a long history of hiring people who used to work at ICE. And so there are now a number of current executives, people who are leading Geo Group, who used to help run ICE. So that's one connection. With this administration specifically, one former Geo Group executive, his name is David Venturella, is now one of the kind of the leading behind-the-scenes players at ICE. And he's actually, my sources tell me, he's helping to kind of oversee the big kind of detention push, and how we're going to expand detention is actually being run by a guy who used to work in one of the biggest detention contractors just like 2 years ago. And there are ethics rules against that, and David Venturella actually got a waiver from those ethics rules that we're still trying to get a hold of the text of that waiver, because we don't know on what grounds the government declared that was okay. Another person with ties to Geo Group is Tom Homan, who's Trump's border czar. He's kind of been the big cheerleader of the immigration crackdown. If you see his statements, he's been out kind of endorsing and pushing for an expansion of detention and supporting the expansion in places like the new facility in the Evergrande, the Alligator Alcatraz. He was the guy out there defending how people were being treated there. So he's been a champion of that, and at the same time, he was a paid consultant for Geo Group just a couple of years ago. So there is this connection of, are the people in this administration really helping their buddies, or are they somehow profiting directly themselves? Again, haven't seen any smoking gun of that, but I think it is something that's worth exploring, because as you mentioned, people in this administration do not seem to have any qualms about that at all, and there have been many examples of people in this administration enriching themselves from the policies that are rolling out of the White House right now.
Sherlock Holmes.
He's very... What's the word? Bothersome.
Oh dear.
He's impressive.
And interesting.
That's what I'm talking about.
Looks like you could use some good energy. Good energy.
And can you think of any other examples of people being personally enriched by kickbacks like that?
Not off the top of my head. Those are the ones that come to mind right now. You mean between the private prisons specifically?
Just in general, like as far as tracing that pattern of behavior to other sectors in Trump admin.
Oh. I probably shouldn't go there today.
Okay.
I don't want to overspeak, and I haven't done personal reporting on that.
Well, for example, the oil and gas lobby were instrumental. They spent almost I think it was multi-billion dollars pumping money into Trump's campaign.
Yeah.
And then the same guy who oversaw those contributions through a super PAC is now one of his energy secretaries, who set up the meeting in the White House with Chevron and Halliburton after the Maduro kidnapping and oil seizure. So for anybody watching this, it all seems pretty illegal. I'm curious if the private prison lobby, Geo Group and CoreCivic, had any campaign contributions in 2024.
Yeah, they were both very big donors to not only the campaign, but I believe that both of them also donated to the inauguration fund, and they might have also donated to subsequent. There's a lot of opportunities now in DC for companies that want to get in with the administration to donate to various things, and I think they have been, Geo Group and CoreCivic have consistently been one of the top contributors to them. They're not alone. There's many companies that are donating across the political spectrum and, across many different industries. So it's hard to look at one donation and say, this led to that. But it's definitely, I think it's something worth noting. One other person that comes to mind is Pam Bondi, the Attorney General. She used to also be a lobbyist for Geo Group, so she knows that. Yeah, she knows that company well. And she, as the Attorney General, She oversees the Bureau of Prisons, which is phasing out their work with Geo Group right now. So she has some kind of, a little bit of potential conflict there, but the Attorney General doesn't directly oversee ICE and the things that they do.
I'm trying to understand, because I'm not like a stock market genius when it comes to publicly traded companies, but what is the process for generating revenue like after people are detained? Like, how does Geo Group profit from people being detained at these facilities?
It's all done through these contracts, and the contracts are negotiated between ICE has a contracting office, and they deal with the companies directly, and they say, basically we're gonna set up a detention operation here, and these are all the things that we're gonna agree to doing. It's gonna house people humanely. It's gonna offer them, beds and clothes and nutritious food and recreation. It's gonna lay out the terms of the contract, but a big part of that contract is gonna be something called the bed rate. And so the bed rate is basically the amount of money that the government is paying per detainee. They can be structured in different ways, but generally in many of these detention centers, they are incentivized to be detaining more people. So that's why when you listen to, you can listen to the earnings calls that these companies do with their investors every quarter, and they'll talk about things like the bed rates, and you'll hear there's a lot of focus on how many detainees are in ICE's system now. We started this Trump administration, we started with around 35 to 40,000 detainees on average per day. We're now up around above 70,000 per day. So, and not all of them, but most of those people are being housed in some way by one of these private companies. So generally that has increased revenue. The two main companies we're talking about are seeing record revenues right now. There's some concern about, investors are actually starting to be a little bit concerned about whether that's going to continue. The pace of the increase in detainees has actually slowed down a little bit, and we've gone from like 60,000 to 70,000, starting to slow down a little bit, maybe because the administration is not able to arrest as many people as it thought it could per day, or maybe they're running out of people that they can arrest.
Also, there's more fear at the border.
Yeah. So generally, the vibe with these companies at the beginning of this administration was, this is going to be the greatest thing that's ever happened to own, shareholders in this company. Now the vibe is a little bit more muted. There's a little bit more concern about, is this really going to be a transformative event for these companies? But they're doing fine. They're doing really well right now.
Yeah. Do you see a world in which maybe like Trump opens the borders back up to get more money for the groups? I mean, they did it during the election, prior to the election.
I think he would have a hard time explaining that to his base.
Well, but you got to think about it. I mean, Governor Abbott of Texas, he refused to sign off on the bipartisan legislation that would have limited asylum seekers from hopping the border and claiming asylum here. Right. Because they knew that they needed to rely on the immigration issue to fearmonger and generate, votes for the upcoming election. Right. You don't think that maybe there'd be a call with Geo Group and Homan and Trump that are like, yo, let's open the border back up. We need that bed rate cracking this year.
It's an interesting point, because it speaks to the question of who is in these facilities now. So in the past, these facilities tend to be mostly border crossers and tend to be people who are arrested by CBP along the border and taken to these facilities. That's also why you tend to see these facilities distributed along the south and the southwest, places like Florida, all the way to Texas and New Mexico, California. A growing portion, I don't know if it's a majority, but a growing portion of the people inside these places were arrested in what they call the interior, which is basically all the non-border states. This is an increasingly diverse population of people because they are, going to people's homes, they're going to schools, they're going to churches, they're going to courtrooms, and they're arresting people who, have sometimes lived, decades in the U.S., working jobs, paying taxes, contributing to their communities. And they're taking these people and putting them into detention centers. Sometimes these people are parents, grandparents in detention centers. So the kind of the makeup of who is in these facilities is changing a lot, and is no longer just kind of the border crossers. So that's also kind of changing, the business for these people. A lot of these people are probably more likely to have health problems, because I think on average they're arresting and detaining older people. And so that has become a challenge for some of these companies. How do we provide healthcare? They're not suddenly going to start spending more money on healthcare, so how do we actually adequately provide for these people who have healthcare? One of the best examples is this man who's detained in Georgia, in a detention facility in Georgia. He was brought to this country when he was, I think, 2 years old, and is a very small child, and he has no legs. He has double prosthetics, and typically somebody like that would just have gotten a waiver and been released. They would have made some accommodation when they were arrested, not detained. This man has been held for months and months. I think probably over 10 months, maybe almost a year. This man has been held there, even though there's, you know, a coalition of activists who are all kind of urging his release. He explained to me in a phone call last year that he needs to plug his prosthetics into a wall in order to charge them every night, and they're not giving. He tells me that ICE is not giving release. He explained to me in a phone call last year that he needs to plug his prosthetics into a wall in order to charge them every night, and they're not giving. He tells me that ICE is not giving him enough time to charge them, so a lot of times they just don't work. And when his prosthetics don't work, he can't move, so he can't even walk down to the end of the hallway to get food for himself. He has to ask somebody to get food. So this is the kind of like it's a good example of how these types of people who in a normal year wouldn't have been detained, and these companies that detain people wouldn't have had to think about how to accommodate someone like that. They're having to like deal with that and figure that out on a bigger level. It's not just this guy, it's many people who are dealing with situations like this.
And you think it's maybe fair to speculate that like meeting this detention quota at these private facilities could be related to the sheer amount of people that are being pulled from the interior and held indefinitely?
It's hard to prove what people's motives are, but if you listen to the administration, they're trying to meet Trump's expectation of millions of people being deported. Right now, we're nowhere near that. We were even close to 1 million people being deported in this term. I'm not even sure that they had the highest number of deportations in a single year of any president yet. I think that, you know, there has been pressure from what Trump is saying in the White House on down to what Stephen Miller says, to what Tom Homan says in press briefings. I think at one point they said they were targeting 3,000 arrests a day. I don't know if they've met that or come close to that, but yeah, the administration has been staking their political livelihood and their political message around, we want to deport millions of illegal immigrants. You know, before you worry about the private companies, I think you should hold them to that. Like, are they actually accomplishing that?
You mentioned the bed rate. Could you give a specific number of how much is generated like per head at one of these places?
DHS usually publishes a bed rate for the whole system, not for individual places. And I think in the past it's been around $150 per person per day.
Sometimes you gotta give it all you got to finish strong. Now you're cooking. Beef has 10 essential nutrients like zinc, iron, and B vitamins to support your well-being. So when we say PR, we mean protein rich. The nutrition you need, the fuel you crave. Together, we bring more. Beef. It's what's for dinner.
A degree, but still no
Families earning six.
They say higher education is outdated, irrelevant. We say, don't settle for the status quo.
At Grand Canyon University, we shatter it.
And we're redefining what higher education looks like. We lead with a pioneering spirit in classrooms that are incubators for bold ideas. Our academically rigorous, industry-driven programs reflect a commitment to merit and Christian truth. GCU believes education shouldn't be a privilege. Affordable education should be accessible to all.
You want opportunity. You want purpose. A chance to lead and serve in meaningful ways.
This is more than just education. It's preparation for a life that transforms.
This is purpose-driven education. Take action. Find your purpose at Grand Canyon University. Visit gcu.edu.
You know, when you're taking people out of their communities and out of sometimes their jobs, and you're taking away their ability to pay taxes and contribute to our society. No longer are these people contributing to society. They're actually now a major cost. I think that's an interesting kind of comparison when you start to see, like, you know, industries and communities that used to really rely on immigrant labor and immigrant taxpayers.
Yeah, but I guess the initial question was like, how do these companies make money? The bed rate costs the company or the taxpayer that money, right?
Yeah.
How do these individual companies profit from detention?
So they have a margin, just like a hotel, just like any business. So they have a bed rate, they agree on with the government, and the government pays them, let's say $150 a day per person. They now take that $150, they say, okay, $10 of that is gonna go to pay for our phone bills for this facility. $5 of that is gonna go to pay for the food that we have to distribute. So like when you take that $150, it gets sliced up into all the different costs that go into running this facility. Many subcontractors, many other companies are coming in to fulfill different services. And at the end of the day, you have some portion of that is the profit. that these places make. The biggest slice of that pie is almost always labor. I don't know the exact number, but it's a significant portion of that pie, where again, you start to see some kind of messing around with this model when the detention companies say, well, do we really need to have 8 guards in this hallway? What if we could make do with 4 guards in this hallway? Do we really need to have a medical team of 2 doctors and 6 nurses? Can we really make do with 1 doctor and 3 nurses? There are some regulations. Typically the contracts will say you have to staff these with a certain number of people, but there's also been a long history of the companies kind of failing to meet those staffing goals.
Would you say that on average, the conditions of a privately owned detention facility are worse than that of one that is managed by a county, state, or federal governing body?
It's hard to say. I think there have been some studies that show that, but I don't know if there's anything conclusive. How do you rank human misery? How do you rank suffering? And how do you rank conditions? I don't know anything definitive about that.
So a lot of young people our age see stuff happening like mass detention, just basically everything going on, every distraction deployed by the Trump administration, the Greenland acquisition, as a distraction from the biggest story of the day, which is the Jeffrey Epstein file release. In your experience reporting, do you give any credence to that theory? They shut down the government to avoid the release of the Epstein files. And right when the second batch was about to come out, all of a sudden, the operation begins in Minnesota. Somali fraud. Everything is, the extreme fear-mongering begins.
Well, I mean, just going back to immigration, I don't know what this president thinks in his own head about immigration, but I do know there's a very strong sentiment held by a large portion of this country, if not majority, then close to a majority of this country, who strongly feel like illegal immigrants need to be locked up and sent away from this country. And this is a big reason, if not the main reason, that this president got reelected. It was running on that. So I don't think it's necessarily a distraction. I think that this issue is his core issue.
When this whole conversation started, you mentioned even outside of Core Civic and Geo Group that you do a lot of reporting to encourage corporate accountability and talk about the ways that big business has hurt the everyman and hurt people in the country.
Yeah.
Who are the top 5 most evil corporations?
I'm not going to go there.
Okay, not evil. Who are the top 5 most harm-causing corporations according to what you've reported?
There's a lot of ways to measure that, right? How are you going to look at harm? Do you measure harm by the amount of greenhouse gases that a company emits?
Well, let's say Blackstone and their control over real estate. That kind of stuff.
Well, so there are different ways. Harm could be harming consumers by charging them exorbitant rates for things they vitally need. That category would be, look at the monopolies that exist in the country, like telecoms. I don't really have any choice in my house which cable and internet provider I can get. I'm at the mercy of this company that I pay exorbitant amount of money so I can have internet at my house. Those kinds of companies are not very popular, and I think that you could argue that's one kind of harm. Another kind of harm is employees, employer harm. Who are the companies that employ a lot of people who are unhappy, who feel like they're not given a fair shot at raising the family and benefits and getting fair wages? There's been a number of questions about Amazon over the years. Is Amazon a fair employer to people who, work in these warehouses and work their butts off to kind of make this logistics system work? Is that, a good living for them? So employer harm is another kind. And there's environmental harm. The oil and gas, the fossil fuel companies will be the top of the list of, environmental harm companies. As a corporate accountability reporter, I think about this a lot. How do you look for the companies that are causing the most harm? How do you slice which companies are doing the most damage to the world? There's different ways to measure that. One way is just, are companies killing people? I did some reporting on, as a Californian, you'll know PG&E, which has actually been convicted of killing people based on negligence that they cause explosions and fires in that state. Another one is Boeing has been under the gun in the past few years about safety lapses and a whole culture of prizing kind of Wall Street earnings and financial results over actual safety and kind of focusing on engineering the most safe plane we can. And that really came back to bite them in a big way when those 2 737 MAX crashes happened. Our company's killing people. Another layer that we're now starting to think about is tech and AI. And so, what is the amount of good that these companies, Google and OpenAI and Amazon, Microsoft, the companies that are telling us this is really something great, it's going to cure cancer, it's going to change the world, it's going to change how you do work, it's going to change how you live. Well, how do we measure that against the real harms that the technology is now kind of imposing on society? It's smartphones and apps are demanding our attention, and they're kind of hooking us into kind of always focusing on the software at the risk of, living our lives. They're demanding our attention, they are demanding our data, and these AI tools, there's a lot of concern now about how they're essentially like manipulating our emotions or manipulating manipulating our psyche and potentially putting vulnerable people and children at risk of harm to themselves. So I think that's another kind of harm that we're starting to see with technology companies. And
when you talk about AI putting young people in harm's way, are you talking about like encouraging self-harm through ChatGPT, flukes in the software that don't detect, I guess, red flags?
Yeah, there's a number of lawsuits that are going on right now about parents whose children committed suicide, and they think that a chatbot played a role in kind of encouraging that kind of thinking.
It's hard because my first impulse is it's the death of creativity. It's going to make it easy to replicate and duplicate the authentic style of others. This is the end. This is the ultimate brain rot final boss. Our youth are cooked. We're never going to have original thoughts again. Every single person is now a commodified property of the algorithm. There's no privacy anymore. The only option is living in a trailer park in the desert alone.
But well, you already do that, so
yeah,
you're good.
Then I think about it and I'm like, are we just the people that property of the algorithm? There's no privacy anymore. The only option is living in a trailer park in the desert alone.
But well, you already do that, so
yeah,
you're good.
Then I think about it and I'm like, are we just the people that used to ride horses and got pissed when the Model T came around?
Yeah.
Or are we just the people who used to read when the Kindles came around?
We just need to adapt.
Is this just another technological advancement that great artists will learn to use to their advantage?
One of the stories that's making the round in my world is that a newspaper in Cleveland, I forget exactly which one, they made this public statement saying that they weren't going to hire some writer who wanted to write, because they said that now the job of journalists at this newspaper is to just go out and report, get information, and then feed it to basically an AI editor who's going to write the story. It's a very interesting idea. I personally think that we're not ready for that. I'm biased. I like to write stories, and I personally think that writing is thinking. The way that I write my stories is informed by what I gathered when I'm reporting, and when I'm out reporting, I'm also like looking for things that are going to go in the story. So I find those two things connected, and I also think that readers don't want to read AI slop. If you don't take the time to write it, why should anybody take the time to read it?
And I hope that you're right, and I hope that real authenticity is able to cut through the AI slop.
I hope, yeah.
You know, I think that it will, but at the same time, I catch myself sometimes like not realizing something's AI. That's because I'm scrolling, and I really feel like there's a war for our minds.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a nefarious force that is trying to make us as stupid as possible. Then I realize, no, there's no boogeyman. It's just a capital incentive structure of the platforms. Engagement is dollars. These are for-profit companies or private companies. You can best get engagement from a user of, let's say, Instagram or TikTok by addicting them to it through short form.
I mean, look at the mental health problem again. Like, one thing that ChatGPT could do when somebody starts expressing suicidal ideation is they could just stop.
Yeah.
They could say, you're not going any further than that.
Booyah, I found it. The perfect condo. But boo-hoo, I was out of the country. And not to fret, my Frost banker drove right over to the condo.
Sam Altman, I think, OpenAI has talked a little bit about we're going to implement safeguards like that.
Continuing to improve how our models recognize and respond to signs of mental and emotional distress and connect people with care.
But as far as I know, the chatbot keeps talking to you, even if you kind of go down these kind of dark directions. So why are they doing that? Why, you know, I think that there might be a hubris right now with some of these Silicon Valley companies. Well, they can be your therapist. They can actually help you through these problems. You know, we've seen where hubris has led corporations in Silicon Valley in the past, and it's not good. You know, these kinds of things should be really approached with a lot of caution and a lot of concern for, you know, I don't want my therapist to be a software engineer in Menlo Park.
Yeah, of course. Or I don't want my therapist to necessarily give me the standard GPT therapy, because I've noticed, different topic, a lot of modern therapy tries to teach you to be selfish. You ever see a therapist before? I know HIPAA violation, but you see a therapist sometimes, you tell them your problems, you have people to provide for, you have a family, and they tell you, you know what, like, put yourself first. Self-care is number one. And you're like, no, it isn't. It's not number one. It's not number one at all. It's like number 10. I do feel like some of the modern therapy is coded in that way that helps people get around their responsibilities.
Maybe, yeah.
And so I think that's why the divorce rate is so high. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Only kidding. We need more traditional human beings in the flesh to maybe get a good read on us. Like, no human being can just be fed advice through a computer.
Definitely teletherapy is good and it opens access to people, but having a human being and a human brain thinking about your problems and what are potential solutions and how to address the problems in your life, that's something uniquely a human can do, at least right now.
It's also all very scary for our position as journalists. The newspaper industry and the digital media industry has already been decimated by the dwindling attention span of online users, to where now every platform, even the big dogs like Washington Post, New York Times, is having to adapt to short form just to reach anybody below 25.
Yeah.
So this, I hope, is not the nail in the coffin for legit information.
Well, look at my news organization just laid off 350 people just in the last couple of weeks. It's a lot of my friends, and honestly, some of the best journalists in the whole world just woke up one morning to find out they lost their job. Yeah. And that is obviously not just a reflection of what we're talking about and the decimation of the business model. That had to do with it.
Yeah.
It also had to do with management decisions at the company that I work for. It is a reality. reality that this thing that we do is changing and we need to learn how to adapt.
And specifically, one of the benefits, like for you, is that you working for a big organization gives you legal safeguards. You can write an article about a corporation that would have the power to sue an individual into poverty, and you have that shield of the Washington Post to at least have your back. They've got retainers for when I'm sure
Well,
you've
the flip
got
side of that is you have to convince the lawyers that it's okay to do that.
Yeah, exactly. But once that article gets published, you know,
Yeah.
for me, if I put something out there and somebody doesn't like what I wrote, I'm being sued right now for a violation of the Federal Wiretap Act by a guy that I've never even filmed, met, and certainly never wiretapped. I interviewed somebody who spoke negatively about him, and he's trying to sue me as a way to punish me for platforming his adversary. That could never happen with the Washington Post. Another fear that I have is in the post-AI journalism barren industry, if there is only, 4 journalists at every news outlet who are just have like a bunch of robots around writing up their daily briefings, then all these other journalists who are going to have to do freelance work are now going to be easier to be targeted by the corporate.
Well, then a law firm can open up a journalism practice.
Yeah.
And they can serve all the journalists.
Yeah,
who need
they
that
love
help.
us. Law firms are dying to take us on contingency. Have you ever had a real threat from a big corporation where you're like, oh my God, I got to slow my roll here?
I've written about companies where I had to go through a lot of hoops to get our internal lawyers on board with hitting the publish button. The go-to move is to hire, there's a handful of defamation lawyers. You know all their names, and they're always the first call these companies hire. They can create problems for getting the story published, but we believe strongly in our reporting. And if I have facts, you're free to publish facts. And so that's what we do.
But I guess the fear is that, if you take testimony from somebody, if that testimony is thought to be false, you can be sued for not doing your due diligence. Like with the Boeing whistleblower case.
Yeah.
Would Boeing be able to sue the Washington Post for being like, this guy's full of shit, you should have known that?
I don't know enough about that one to comment on it. If you were reporting on allegations somebody made, you at a minimum need to take great care and diligence with trying to confirm the accuracy and trying to understand the basis for those claims, and also giving a very fair chance for the other person to comment.
And that's the main reason I'm afraid for the future of journalism in a post-AI world. You know what an anti-slap statute is, right? When you're being sued for defamation by a billionaire who's trying to bully you, you used to be able to file an anti-slap motion, which basically said, hey, this lawsuit needs to be thrown out, this is not right. Sometimes the judge wouldn't understand, so she would deny it. You used to be able to appeal. Right now, they just reversed the anti-slap appeal process, meaning you have to move to deposition and summary judgment. It's crazy, like the safeguards to protect journalists, especially independently, are getting really, really small.
Real journalism, I think, still matters. I don't think that AI will do our jobs ultimately. Certain aspects of our lives can be automated, but the idea of gathering new information, gathering facts that are hard to find, getting sources to tell us things that maybe they're not supposed to tell us, and revealing information about the world and how it works, how government works, how big corporations work from the inside. This is stuff that a chatbot can't do, as far as I know, yet. So I believe that that's going to continue to exist.
Mm-hmm. That video that came out recently, there was a drone shot of like people inside of a detention facility in the outdoor area wearing like blue and red ponchos, like talking to the camera. Do you know what facility that was taken at?
I don't. Vaguely rings a bell, but I don't know exactly which one that is.
Is there anything that American people and American voters can do to stop what's going on with the expansion of these detention facilities?
One of the few groups of people who are actually allowed into detention centers are members of Congress. And so members of Congress do have an oversight role by law that they're allowed to go, given a certain amount of notice, show up at the facility, tour the facility, talk to people who are inside. To some extent, they're a little bit limited in what they can do with that information. So, one of the things people can do is vote. They can talk to their representative in Congress, push for more transparency, push for more policies around this, and they can vote in the midterms about what they see in these detention centers that they do or they don't like. Going back to these warehouses that they're building, these are buildings that are not going to adhere to any local zoning laws, because the federal government's position is that when they buy these places, it's federal property and it's no longer kind of beholden to local laws, whether that's zoning or whether that's any kind of permitting processing, which is kind of strikes a lot of locals as insane, because these are buildings that were not built to house humans. But ultimately, at the end of the day, there's something in the Constitution called the Supremacy Clause. It says when the federal government have a policy and a priority, that will take precedence over local jurisdiction. So ultimately, at the end of the day, it does look like the federal government will be able to buy and operate these warehouses. They're probably going to bring in some of the outside companies we're talking about to run the detention centers, renovate them and run them. Even though these communities are going to have to kind of live with the impacts on their infrastructure, they're not going to really have any meaningful engagement with these buildings, which I think is exactly what you're talking about. Is like, I don't like this is happening, but I don't feel like there's anything I can do about it.
Where is the first ice warehouse getting built?
We think that the first one is going to open in the next few months, maybe as soon as April, in Maryland. That's right outside of Hagerstown. It's about 90 minutes west of here.
So yeah, I want to cover the story. I was just trying to figure out the right place to begin the journey.
Well, this is a problem with my reporting: is how do I take my readers inside these facilities?
I'm telling you.
Of Hagerstown, it's about 90 minutes west. Live with the impacts on their infrastructure. They're not going to really have any meaningful engagement with these buildings, which I think is exactly what you're talking about. Is like, I don't like this is happening, but I don't feel like there's anything I can do about it.
Where is the first ice warehouse getting built?
We think that the first one is going to open in the next few months, maybe as soon as April, in Maryland. That's right outside of Hagerstown. It's about 90 minutes west of here.
So yeah, I want to cover the story. I was just trying to figure out the right place to begin the journey.
Well, this is a problem with my reporting: is how do I take my readers inside these facilities?
I'm telling you,
I can't go inside.
You can do what I did. If you right now cross the Rio Grande, you will be arrested and taken to an ice facility for three days. I was under Biden. I did it under the Biden administration, but I'm sure that Trump would probably make an example out of you.
How do we report on what's going on inside? We can't get in, so that's the challenge right now. I'm trying to figure out. So one way is audio, video. These places have surveillance cameras. Those should be public records. Can we somehow get our hands on the surveillance cameras? There's 911 calls made from these facilities. Those are records of real harms and things that are happening inside the facilities. So this is kind of what I'm working on. Is like, how do we get documentary proof of what's happening inside these places? Because I can't go inside, but I need to like take my readers and show them, kind of bridge the empathy gap. Because when you can't go inside, you don't have any empathy for it. You don't know what it's like inside there. You don't know what was it like? Tell me, was it like a prison? Like, what did it feel like?
So I've been to jail for graffiti, county jail in South Dakota. It's not where I'm from. I was on a road trip. County jail is a lot better than ICE detention. The difference is that in county jail, you get all of the regular privileges of being an American citizen in jail. They ask you if you want to go to the library. You get some Stephen King books. You go. You sleep the entire time. There's 8 dudes. Everyone's got a bed. There's lights out. There's chow time. In ICE detention facilities, there's no commissary. There's no phone calls. The lights never turn off. There's a constant.
Really?
The one that I was in never turns off, and they would call it the hilera, which is the ice box. And you talk about deterrent methods like alligator Alcatraz, they keep the pods that house the detainees as cold as possible with the hopes that they'll return to their home country and be like, yo, it's freezing in there, it was horrible.
Did you get a blanket or anything?
They give you a single space blanket, which is that 25-cent reflective thing, the silver one. They give you no pillows, so everyone sleeps on their own shoes.
Wow.
Many of the shoes are covered in like gross water from the Rio Grande. They give you like 1 or 2 meals a day. It's disgusting. Shared bathroom for 40 people, 1 toilet. It's in the corner. Everyone has to watch you take a shit. People are holding for days.
You gotta do what you gotta do.
You think that when that's with 1 cellmate, 40 other dudes, but there is strange loopholes. For example, you can request snacks all the time. I don't know why that exists, but you can request specifically a Capri Sun juice box. There's a button where you can say you need it. So there's all these really strange things where you're like, are you guys trying to meet some like requirement legally?
Interesting. Well, a lot of these places do have commissaries, and there's a theory that like they make the food that you get for free really bad, and they jack up the prices of the stuff in the commissary. People have actually compared the prices of like a tube of toothpaste in the commissary versus one you can just buy at a local drugstore in the same area, and it's like $13 for the same tube of toothpaste that you get for $2 somewhere else. That's potentially part of the business model. There's always ways of trying to make money. Pretty universally, I've heard that the food in these places that they give you like cold burritos and stuff is almost inedible.
I was in South Texas Processing Center in Eagle Pass, Texas. Most people from there were going to Otay Mesa or a facility in San Antonio. Those places probably have tablets, commissary, etc. But I was in the very first stage of processing. Some people had been there for a really long time. There's a judge. They had a 24-hour Zoom judge. Still, like, you can't have an appointment for like 4 days. But as far as your news gathering practices, the big challenge of documenting it is getting footage and audio from inside the facilities to bridge the empathy gap.
Evidence.
Have you gotten anything so far?
We did get this inspection report that ICE's own inspectors that went in there, and they documented 60 violations of this place in Fort Bliss, Texas, and El Paso, Texas. This is a government's own inspectors documenting these things. We've looked at these facilities that are relying on 911 for like medical emergencies almost on a daily basis. But as far as audio, video, we're still working on that. There has been some like cell phone videos leaking out of some of these places that show kind of just like dozens of people in a small room that was never meant to hold people for that long. Images have a power to move people and to kind of help people feel for what's going on in these places that, you know, none of the words that I write can do. So that's why I think it's important to try to figure out how to get images from them.
And you feel like the kind of digital blackout space that's been created by the facility has made it harder to reach people.
Yeah.
As far as getting surveillance footage, I'm sure you've done FOIA.
Yeah, we're waiting for some.
Because the Epstein files, not to bring it all the way back there, they also said there were no files. It took Ro Khanna and Thomas Massey campaigning for months to get the Epstein Transparency Act passed.
Yeah.
And finally, all of a sudden, they exist. Do you think that there could be a watershed moment where you gain access to a lot of media from behind the wall?
I'm hoping it's this death that we talked about earlier with this man that was killed in a detention center. I'm hoping that there's video of that. You know, we requested it. I think just understanding what happened there, it's going to be hard to do without seeing what the video looks like. I think that could be really, really powerful if we can get our hands on something that shows that rather than just relying on people's eyewitness stories about it.
Well, best of luck, man. I appreciate your time.
It's been great. Thanks, Andrew.
Yeah. Anything else you want to say to the world, the people, the children of the world, or not children, but just the viewers, some of which may be children?
Nothing profound.
Follow your dreams?
Yeah, follow your dreams. It's great.
Thanks, man.
Thanks, man.
Channel 5 Live will...
Grip, stability, precision. That's the essence of driving.
At last, spirits that linger within these halls have found peace. I hope that one day, my sisters will be able to do the same. As for myself, I shall fill these halls with music until they return home. Thank you, champions.
Today, you know Tosin Abasi as the virtuoso guitarist of Animals' Leaders. But can you believe he almost gave up his passion for guitar? In the early 2000s, a metalcore band known as Reflux would showcase Tosin as a 7-string guitar player who played aggressive rhythms and crazy fast sweep-pick guitarist and producer who lived nearby that was making studio-quality music from his bedroom. This led to Tosin meeting Misha Mensur. The two quickly became friends, but eventually, Tosin would find he was no longer content with just headbanging and shredding. Being that he was self-taught, Tosin felt that there was much more for him to learn about guitar, and so he quit the band to attend Atlanta Institute of Music and Media. But as time went on, Tosin felt discouraged that the type of music he wanted to create was falling on deaf ears. So he considered putting down his guitar and leaving everything behind. Fortunately, Misha told him he was crazy. He was able to get Tosin to let him help produce some new demos, and eventually, his first solo project, Animals as Leaders. Now, years later, Tosin is celebrated by many fans and fellow guitarists as a true musical prodigy, proving that patience and dedication and the help of a good friend can truly pay off. Today, you know Tosin. Today, you know Tosin.
The terrace holds what we require to gain entry to the Void Storm, the cynosure of Twilight. We can't afford to linger here.
You'll go no further, Umbric. These new defenses were specially made with you in mind.
I seem to be detained. The construct ahead is heightening Rama's spellwork. Destroy it!
Compliance is not optional. Suppressive measures necessary. Please remain still. Compliance is not optional. Suppressive measures necessary. Refuse. Please stand by. Resuming disciplinary measures. Compliance is not optional. Proceeding with impairment.
A crude solution, but effective. The Cynosure should be just ahead. Stand down. I have permission from Lorthamar himself.
Liar! None shall lay hands on the Cynosure! The Cynosure remains here! Kill Fedor!
Restrain him. I'll take care of these shields.
Mark for defeat! Speak no more! I am unrelenting! Your fall is written! Silence! Your fall is written! Speak no more! I am unrelenting!
Help me remove the wards around the Cynosure.
Surround them! The void has broken through!
Champion, I know what to do. I'll need to attune the Cynosure to the Void Storm. What is that monstrosity? You keep it occupied. You dare? Get down! It is done. We have our way into the Void Storm. Let us inform Lorthamar. And perhaps offer an apology for the near catastrophe.
here to prowl with me. I have used the shadows to see inside the cavern. I have seen my people dead, alive, or he be the one bringing my people here.
Who be stealing my kill? Who be letting Alasi's little kittens go? I don't have a target.
What does my eagle find? A trespasser, an interloper, but you won't take my prey from me. Oh, you look like a good guy. Let's break the block floor. If I don't get that, Necrax wins. Necrax, strike! But it's hot. Push him down, Necrax. You won't. Pick him, Necrax. Frozen right. With me, Necrax. Right on time. Necrax, drive. Where's the blood flow? If I don't get that, Necrax, no! Right into it. Necrax, right. In for the heart. Take them down, Necrax. The beast survived. You won't. Come back to me, girl.
A good kill, Hashura, and I rescued all that was still alive. But why did Nurajin bring them here? The kidnapping won't stop until we get to the root of the evil. Follow me. That not be natural. And the energy flowing into it. This is hex magic, using the souls of the dead in powerful magic spells. I hope this is not why they brought my kin here. If the maker of that monstrosity be here, we must stop them and make sure their creation is put down. be worse than we thought. How many of my people are... rending the souls, twisting them, feeding them to that monster. There are souls still that we can save. You confront her. created from beyond. Shall accomplish nothing. Rak'tul will still rise. She's dead, but her evil lives on. There'll still be many angry souls. I will keep them busy and keep them from feeding the monster. But the monster be up to you.
What have you done?
Be careful. He seems powerful and unstable. Vile branch gone, we with the bark all be sleeping a little safer. For now, we will always be looking over our shoulders at the Vile branch. Come back with me.
Take a
The
shower.
chief be having a reward for you.
Okay. I'm gonna go to my car real quick.
Okay.
I'm gonna go to my car real quick.
Dust is limited, so we must call the areas where the light bloom is most active. A large attack only causes the light bloom to spread. A few, striking the most dangerous, that is best.
has a price, and the Light Moon will make sure you pay it.
So this is where Ruya has hidden himself. They can take us below, but swiftly. I would not expose them to the light bloom long.
With the light bloom, I can restore the Haranir to what we must be. But you stand in my way.
I will block their ways. We will not escape again. His faith in the goddess has become hatred. Is this what Lightbloom does? Follow me. A precision attack. I should have called for everyone. We must destroy it before they finish infusing it. Is persistent. We too must be.